Hello and welcome to another episode of Sorare Gallery Builder. In today's episode, we have got Chris from Sorare on a Budget. Chris, welcome to Sorare Gallery Builder. What's going on, man?
Thank you very much for having me.
I was thinking, where to take my sort of fourth episode of this. I've done 500, I've done 200, and then I was a bit like, okay, well, where do I take the next sort of number, in terms of, the gallery value? And I went for unders. For this one, and I thought, who better to have on than yourself, Chris. Sorare on a Budget on Twitter, on YouTube. Go check him out, lads. I just thought it just fitted perfectly for the brand, right?
It seems to. It's on brand anyway, shall we say. But yeah, I mean, obviously a couple of weeks ago I had the 8th place in Cap 220 with a 13 quid team, so it seems to be a good time for it, obviously with the market prices on some of the players and things. So yeah, I've managed to dig out a few good ones, I think.
Yeah, this one's interesting because I've not, I gave you the sort of the criterias. Well, as you can see in the title, guys, we're doing a £50 gallery builder. So, how to play Sorare with 50 quid, as if you were basically brand new to the game. And yeah, I haven't spoken to you at all on your build. So I literally haven't got a clue, any sort of players that you've built prior to me and you speaking, which is cool because this is going to be a bit of a mystery for me. But I am expecting to get blown out the water in terms of in terms of the competition. So for people watching at home that aren't regulars, I want you guys to comment below whose build you think's better after you've watched the videos, mine or Chris's. Whoever gets the most votes, either me or Chris, basically doesn't get to give away a card, and the loser has to, basically just a little limited card to somebody random in the comments, and make sure you leave your Sorare gallery name in there just so it's easy for us to send that card over to you. But yeah, I'm going in with low expectations in this one. Pressure's off me, the pressure's all on you, mate, I think.
Well, yeah, I'd like to say I did try to think, if I was starting now, what would I do? And what I would do would probably be play with what I know. I know when I first came onto the platform, I went straight into like the MLS and I didn't know anything. But that time we didn't have the choice of looking at, the Scottish Premier League or looking at, places I did know. So yeah, I've tried to stick with what I know. So hopefully there's a few bargains in there for folk.
Yeah, no, I think that sort of, that way of thinking is how you should come into this game, and for a lot of new players, I think that will be the Premier League. I know we're at the end of that season and stuff, but just in terms of the popularity of that league, I haven't gone down that route personally, but like you said, it kind of comes down to what are you comfortable with. So this video isn't you should go and copy our £50 galleries, because if you don't know anything about the MLS or if you don't know anything about the Scottish League, it's just not going to be as fun for you, is it, at the end of the day? So it's just take that concept and kind of mold it into where you're comfortable in terms of buying players and leagues and stuff. So we'll kick it off with your gallery first, Chris. Give us your £50 Sorare gallery builder.
If I start off, would be with the goalkeeper. So the competition that I was aiming for was the Cap 240 limited. Reason being, it gives me an opportunity to play to win the threshold every week, and I've always viewed the threshold competitions as a competition against myself. I'm not having to worry about what your team that you're putting out is, or the Wales are putting out, or the brand new guys are putting out. All I have to worry about is my team. So on that basis, I am going to go with a goalkeeper first, and it's Trevor Carson from St Mirren. Now, he is older, however, he's just signed a brand new contract there, so that was one that obviously appealed to me that way. He was slightly cheaper when I priced him last night, but it's not terribly more expensive. You see, 0.0066, which I think is probably about £9.50 or so.
That's cheap.
Which, for a starting goalkeeper, it just seems bonkers to me. But last 15 score 41. St Mirren are probably going to finish in the top half of the league, which means they're going to end up having 5 games against the top teams in the league still to play. So they've got 9 games left in the season. The reason I went with these leagues as well, Harry, sorry, I should have said, was I've went with what I know. And also these leagues have either got 9 or 10 games left. And that'll allow me to build the ETH to buy a goalkeeper for the summer, which would be MLS, Brazil, J-League, that sort of thing. So he's been ever present all season. So that's how I'm going to kick it off. Trevor Carson in the goal here.
That makes sense. I mean, not like you said, £9 for a starting goalkeeper. We are in the sort of the last third of the season, so it makes sense in that way. But then you could look at, market conditions as well. It's all sort of added up to that sort of price, I guess. Yeah, I was actually looking at his Super Rare a couple months ago, actually, when I was trying to dive in, or looking to dive into the sort of the Cap 240 Super Rare, but I didn't. I actually missed out on 2 auctions of him randomly, but I think they auctioned like the first, 1 of 10 and 2 of 10 really close to each other a couple months back.
Yeah.
Regardless, random one, but I love the pick. Really good start.
Yeah, it's just a really cheap starting point. There are other goalkeepers in the Scottish League that you could look at to pick into there. However, I feel like he's probably got the long-term picture there. So my next one is going to be a defender, and it is Anderson, who plays for Austria Lustenau in the, guess what, in the Austria League.
Yep.
He's their right back. He's quite an attacking player. So as you can see, last 15 of 46, but his last 5 is 57. He's been playing pretty well recently. He's got 4 goals and 5 assists this season in 21 games. He's played every game except for one where he was suspended. So a reliable player. And he was coming in actually a little bit more last night. So it's about £2.50 odds just now.
Love that.
And as I say, I mean, you can see he's in for him. His team have finished in the bottom half of their league as well. So they split top half and bottom half. So they've got 10 games to play. So it's home and away against the bottom 6 teams. And they have been one of the better teams in there. They were probably unlucky not to have made it into the top 6. So yeah, Anderson, he's going to be my pick for there. A good chance of decisives, 9 decisives in 21 games. I think that's pretty solid for a couple of quid.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, really, isn't it? I know the whole, there's a big break, isn't there, in the Austrian sort of league when winter comes and stuff. But
yes,
yeah, when there's utility on hand for those type of players and you're getting them for £2.50s, then they kind of have to be snapped up, don't they? For sure.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, 10 games to go for them as well. So, and it's all against the bottom end teams. So they don't have to play Salzburg, or Sturm Graz or anything like that. They've got the lower end teams. So it's it's a player that I actually own both these cards
Nice.
as it is. So yeah, stick with what you know. And again,
100%.
I'm going to head back to Scotland now.
Nice.
And a new international has just been called up to the Northern Irish squad. You'll see the Northern Ireland badge on that one. So he's actually got utility over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Whether he plays or not is a different issue. The international break's always like that, isn't it? You know, 20 odd players into the team. It's hard to say who's going to start. But Sean Goss, last 15 of 48. Since Motherwell sacked their manager and brought a new manager in and played a new style, he's got last 5 of 61.
Wow.
So he's been playing really well since the new manager came in. Most of that is all around score rather than decisives. He's only got 3 assists for the entire season. So 0.0015 was his price on the market, as you can see there, and that again is about £2.20. So yeah, pretty decent card, as you can see by it as well. He's an ever present. So I think that's key when you're looking for the thresholds, is to try and find those players that are the ever presents.
100%. I think that, plus what you just said about that, he's only had 3 decisives, but he's got an L5 of 61, shows that he has a crazy AA score, right? And that's, I remember Jonathan did a really good Twitter thread on beating the cap, basically, and it was kind of all centered around you need guys with good AA at the end of the day. DAs are hard to come by for the most part, especially for these sort of defenders. So it's like, you need reliability, and that is in the form of playing 90 minutes and then getting like your nice AA scores, isn't it?
Absolutely. And then the other thing I look at with the cap 240s is where possible to play 2 forwards, because I feel that, if you're going to lack on the AA possibly, if you've got the chance of the decisives, then it adds on. So I'm going to stick with Motherwell, and I'm going to stay with one of his teammates, which is Kevin Van Veen. It's a player I've kind of championed quite a lot. He is the 4th top goal scorer in the Scottish League, and he is coming in just over £3 at the moment. Kevin Van Veen, I think, is it 14 goals for the season, 1 assist. Last 15 of 48, but again, he's been slightly overshooting that since the new manager came in. They've been playing with 2 up front, and it's amazing what happens when you have 2 up front. Instead of being isolated on his own, he's now got somebody with him, and it's 54 for the last 5 there. So a decent score, and as I say, 4th top goal scorer in the Scottish League.
And is he a midfielder card, right?
No, he's forward.
Forward card, okay.
Yeah, he's a forward card.
Okay.
So, and this was to allow me to sneak in 2 forwards into this lineup and keeping it really cheap still.
Yeah.
his price on the market last night was 0.002, so it's gone up what's that, about 40p, 50p, so you're probably looking about 340 or so for him just now.
Perfect.
And sticking with another forward, and it's a hard one to explain. The Austrian league is underpriced in my opinion. They do have that big gap in the winter, 100%, but Marcus Pink is the top goal scorer in the league with 16 goals. And he has a last 15 of 53, last 5 of 60. He's been in a rich vein of form. Even his rare card's not that expensive. His rare card's coming in about 100 quid for the top goal scorer in the league, which I just think is madness.
How old is he? Sorry, Chris.
Sorry?
How old is he? Sorry, Chris.
He's 32. He was actually linked to a move to Italy in the January window as well. I want to say it was Cagliari.
Yeah. I
could be wrong. It was either Cagliari or Genoa, but I think it was Cagliari. But he's their captain as well. He's 0.003, so you're looking at about £4.50 at the moment for him.
That's ridiculous.
As I say, 16 goals, top goal scorer in the league. It just seems that a lot of the Austrian players are underpriced, regardless of age. And whether that is the big gap in the middle of it, or whether it is, I genuinely can't explain it. I've stuck with that league since last year because it's just done me well. I
was just sorry to interrupt you, Chris. I was just thinking, just trying to think of reasons why it's not popular in that sense. But I think people are. I don't know if I want to call it lazy, but it comes down to convenience, doesn't it? Like, who are you going to look at? Are you going to look at like a John McGinn who's playing for Aston Villa, or are you going to go and look at this fellow who plays in the Austrian league, although he's got 6? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it just depends on your appetite for research at the end of the day, doesn't it? It depends how much you want it in all aspects of life. That just applies to everything. But ultimately, if you want to find these bargains, you're going to have to just go deep diving into some of the pits. It's just simple.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I have deep dived into many of the pits to find bargains over the time, but I just find the top goal scorer in a league to be £4, £4.40, £4.50 just seems really, really cheap. But that would be the team that I would be looking to put out into a cap 240. And it comes in, well, it did last night. It came in at £20.59 for the entire team.
Yeah, that's
maybe slightly gone up. So let's say £22, £23.
That is frightening, genuinely, because like the players that you've shown me in terms of their scores as well and their sort of AA capability. Like, I'm not just saying it, but that team could win Cap 240. Like you can look at some 5 players, you can just go, that team might scrape ETH, right? But you can look at some teams and go, hang on a minute, that actually could compete on the, you've got 9 or 10 games left, basically, haven't you? Yeah, I'm not saying that's going to win the division in those 9 or 10 games, but you're going into game weeks thinking, you just never know, like, genuinely.
You got a decent chance. Do you know? It's one of those things, and it's, I mean, it's all capable players. I mean, the 2 strikers between them have got 30 goals for the season. You've got a midfielder who's hitting high numbers, and you've got a defender who's getting 9 decisives in 21. It's only your goalkeeper you're kind of worried about, maybe, if he can keep a clean sheet. But it kept us within, I think it was within about 3 points as well of the cap. So there was a little bit of room for manoeuvre if you want to pick up a different keeper, but it just worked for me. And like I say, hopefully over that 9-10 week period, if you could pick up a handful of thresholds and save them up, then you can start to look, to buy the goalkeeper to go with the Cap 220 team that I've picked up, which was going to be MLSG league based, but I've actually tried to keep it MLS, and there's a reason for that. Obviously, if people are watching this before the weekend, the MLS is one of the leagues that's actually still running over the international break, so it just gives that extra utility for folk. So I've went with a Cap 220 team for the next 4 players. So do you want me just to roll in with that now?
Yeah, go straight in.
Let's go in then. So these were players that were fairly new to me, and I had to do a little bit of research on them to dig them out. But we've got Zan Kolmanek. I'm going to butcher names. I am famous for 100% butchering names. These ones are fairly okay, but I will butcher some. So he's plays for Austin FC. He is their left back. And this season he started 4 out of 4. Last season he was predominantly a substitute, but he has been a starter this season so far. His score for this season is, well, as you can see, his last 5, because I've only played 4 games this season, 57. So he's coming at the season in form. And his card is coming in at £3.68, or that's what it was last night, when, depending how Eith's sitting, but about £3.70, let's just say, for argument's sake. Overall, last 15 of 46, so he's keeping his cap score, within check. But yeah, a decent card to get started with here.
I like it. Yeah, no, this is going to be interesting now, because I don't want to. Well, I'm going to reveal that my gallery build is all MLS based, so I'm interested to see if we got any overlaps in terms of names. But he's not one, so no, it's nice to learn a new name. To be fair,
do you know what? It was a new name to me. I'm not going to lie. And the next one is one that I picked up from a gallery in rare form. Arthur. He has come from Columbus Crew to Houston, and he has started off the season really well. And it's all AA for him as well, I believe. And let me just double check my notes for that one. I believe his is all AA. His score for the season is 56. For the last 5, but he didn't play the last game last season. So last 15 of 44. So since he's moved, he's obviously been kind of relishing the move. Sitting in about £2.80. So because of that 44, it fits quite well, to get an in-forum player who's last 5 is a bit higher, but his 15 is still fairly low. So it just kind of shows to me that, okay, the moves worked for him, and he is, he's getting a run of games, which is important for some players.
100%, and he is one of the overlaps, Chris.
So it's always good to get validation on a pick as well, because he was one that, like I say, at the weekend there, I picked him up in rare. I'm looking forward to this weekend, and he just fit quite well, I thought, with that. So
100%.
Does look good value. I mean, even the rare price, again, I know we're not looking at the rare prices, but the rare price isn't that bad either for a guy that's pulling in those kind of numbers if you're playing for thresholds. So the next one is one of these cards where it says he is he's a forward, but I think he basically plays anywhere down the left, but he's mainly been left back this season. So we're looking at Tate Schmitz of Houston Dynamo, sticking with Houston. He's played all these games at left back. He does have a goal for the season. I'm just going to adjust that. I've just adjusted how I was sitting. Last 15 of 48. So that's basically his score for the season, because he hadn't played at Salt Lake where he was beforehand. Started all 3 games. He's got 1 goal. £7. That'll be about $7.40 now, because it's gone up a little bit. But decent price, and it's a card that he's playing every game. So I thought, well, it's worth a punt, see how he gets on and continue in that form.
I like that. That's something that I didn't actually manage to come across in my research on this build, was could I find an MLS forward that isn't actually a forward, if that makes sense? Because they're pretty pricey, like in terms of limited terms. Like we're on a budget here, like we really are. And I've not spent more than £3.50 on a forward, just because I just didn't really see any value in terms of I've had to just go with forwards that just aren't really AA capable, which is against the grain. But ultimately, we're on a budget, and you just got to do what you got to do sometimes. But that's a really interesting pick.
In fairness, outside the goalkeeper, I think he's the most expensive card that I picked up. But it's one that I just feel, I did as much research as I could when I was looking at them, but I don't know for definite, is he nailed on in that position? I think so. I mean, it looks like it, but, we'd probably see moving forward. My next one is one that's in my gallery. I had him last year after he came back from, if I could spell, there we go. When he came back from injury, Jaroslav Niezgoda, assuming that's how you pronounce it. I've got his rare cards. I picked it up at the, heading into the weekend, just so I had a team to put out. I've actually picked up other boys since, but his last 15 is low, so it fits in with the cap. It's only 32. He was a substitute for a lot of the end of last season. Portland have had a fairly torrid start to the season. He's played 4 times this season so far, 3 starts, 1 substitute, 0 goals. So it is a bit of a gamble having him in there. But if he gets in and gets you the 35, you never know what could happen at least. Last season, he did have 9 goals and 3 assists over the course of the season. So he is a player that is capable. It's just, getting the supply to him or him taking his chances, I guess. But looking at his price, you're talking about, £3.50, £3.60. So it's a decent value card if he can get back on the scoring
Yeah, no, it just players coming in and out of form is just something that you've just got to deal with as a footballer and as us as fans of footballers, you know, in that sense.
Completely.
And it's just one
And
of
it
those
is one of
things.
those things with the cap, you know, it's trying to find that balance, isn't it? Because I mean, realistically, what you're looking at is like 44 as an average. So if you are going to go with a couple of higher value players, you are going to need one that's maybe a little bit less, and just hope for the best. Which is why I put forward into it for that position, because if he can at least get get a goal, he's got to pull in the 60 points, isn't he? So it's that was my thought process behind him there. That would be my cap 220 team. Obviously, you pair that up with a goalkeeper, whichever fits. I didn't actually look at what goalkeepers would fit, but I think I've got about 45 points to play with.
Okay.
So it gives a fair bit of scope. I do have one card left, and what I was looking at for that one was maybe looking at some of the semi-pros.
Okay.
And the one that everybody kind of looks at, and it's because it's as you say, it's the league everybody knows, and that was the Premier League.
Yeah.
So with what I had left over, so that team, sorry, I should have said that one came to about 1634 last night. So let's just say 1650, 17 quid, just for argument's sake.
Yeah.
It left me with about 13 quid to pick up a player.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a decent amount. But what I did was I had a look and I picked up Tyrone Mings.
Okay.
Reason being, obviously he's pretty much an ever present, and his scores are pretty solid. To be fair, last 5 is 61, last 15 52, and obviously I don't know. I'm guessing he's not in the England squad, or have England not got a game at the weekend, or is it maybe midweek?
But I don't think he got in the squad, as far as I'm aware. But I don't. Yeah.
Well, I mean, at least he was previously getting a run and things like that, but.
Yeah.
It's just he's been really solid basically. So I thought, if you were going to build a team, because you could obviously go in with your draft team that you could pick up, and you could pick up worldies, and that one is a bit of a crapshoot almost, because everybody could go and pick up the same players in terms of Haaland, Rashford, Sacco, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And a goal, any goalkeeper to go in with them, and then you could put Mings in there, and you've got half a shot of, there's only 200 or so cards, but you're in with a shout of it. It gives you your own league, or the main league to follow at the same time as well. So I just thought that was maybe just a way just to round it out. It would leave over about 5 quid from the budget, which I haven't bought anything or picked anything up with, because I just would like to keep that back in case somebody got injured, or I was looking at, if somebody gets suspended and they need to fill something in, or if I see there's a suspension, and whatever you needed to do. So it just left you a little bit of money left over there to trade with if needs be.
100%. Joe, I'm sort of in love with your gallery, Chris. that sort of £5 sort of in the back pocket as well. Like, I think that comes in handy with just going through your gallery. That obviously you're going in with 5 sort of threshold. You got your 5 threshold players, you got your 4 cap 240, then you got your Mings. Like you said, there's no real room for error, in the sense that if somebody gets injured, that's obviously where the £5 comes in, and you can kind of just execute what you need to do with that. So I think that is really important. I would suggest that if anyone is building teams, just leave a bit of a cash balance, because if you think you're gonna only need 5 players for a cap 240 threshold team, you are wrong, because it's just, not only can the cap go over or under or whatever, but also injuries, suspensions, just random things, childbirths that we saw last week.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm happy. I'm very happy, and I think that sort of £5 will, people listening at home, I think that'll tip them over the edge, in the sense of I think your gallery's just going to blow me out of the water, basically. Just because of the variety as well, though. I'm somebody that likes not my gallery doesn't really fall into this category, but I like the thought of playing multiple different competitions as a beginner. I think that excites me. You want to get as much out of your capital as possible, and that what you've done there is you're able to threshold chase. You're able to put a decent lineup ish into a cap 220 lineup with a common keeper, and then you've got a little shot at some Premier League limited. If Tyrone Mings scores an 80 as a captain, gets you 125 points, and your 4 other commons smash, then you're just laughing, aren't you, basically? And this is all for 50 quid.
And that's it. It's all for 50 quid. And do you know what? When you look back at, I could look back to before my Sorare days, I'd be spending maybe a £5 on a coupon at a weekend and getting nothing back for it. Whereas at the end of the day, not only am I I've bought these players and I've got potential to win, but I've still got the players that I can sell back again.
Yeah.
So, and the limited market, okay, things have been a bit slower recently, but I find the limited market is still super fluid. The team I buy for the weekend is sold by Monday. It's generally how I do it, and then I can look to build for next weekend, that sort of thing. So it's very fluid. If you need to get players in and out, it's easy done.
Yeah, I think I mean, honestly, I think that's sort of like how you've managed to squeeze that sort of three lineup build out of that budget is quite phenomenal, and I kind of expected it from you. So you've lived up to expectations 100%.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
No, for sure. And yeah, in terms of my gallery, I've gone all in on Cap 240 limited, right? I found it not tough, but I was quite surprised at seeing how cheap outfield players are, right, compared to the goalkeeper. And then, like I mentioned earlier on in the video, I've gone straight in with MLS. I'm going just strictly MLS to keep it simple, even though it's not going to be simple for people that don't know the MLS, but that's just, the nature of the beast, right? You just got to learn these new things. And I had to, at one point, I was never an MLS fan, right? Yeah. Being from Wales. You just learn these things. And yeah, I've gone in with a build of, I think I've got 10 players, so 1 goalkeeper and 3 of every other position. Okay. I lied. 9 players, 2 forwards, 3 midfielders, 3 defenders, 1 goalkeeper. So 9 players. And yeah, my ultimate goal is to just win that threshold. Now, looking at your gallery and thinking at mine now, if I'm a beginner, what would I enjoy more? I probably would enjoy yours more. But in terms of, and I know we haven't got into my gallery yet, but in terms of my strategy, my thinking is, okay, we've got 30 plus games left of the MLS. How many times can I win that threshold, right? It's a $5 threshold, whatever it is. Can I win it 20 times? Because if I can, there's $100 there, or 100 pounds, 100 euros, right? Where, we're not trying to compare galleries, but, yours is more Euro Cap 240 base for now, and, you've only got 9 shots at it, roughly, right? Not saying you won't hit it 9 out of 9 times, because that 5 players that you showed me were very good, and I'm not doubting it, but like I'm just sort of trying to just give people at home like where our strategies are coming from. I'm sort of looking at I've got a whole 8-9 months ready now for MLS, and can I squeeze out as much threshold as possible out of my players, right? So we're going to go in with Dane St. Clair of Minnesota United. Now, the problem is with goalkeepers in the MLS right now, they're obviously going to be quote-unquote inflated because they have a full season ahead of them, right? Compared to your Scottish League goalkeepers, any other European league, really, for the most part, they're going to be on the down spiral, effectively. And MLS keepers are going to sort of retain their value for a little while, I'd hope. But Dane St. Clair seemed to be a lot cheaper than the rest, which I thought was quite interesting. And I don't really have that much of a reason for it, other than obviously, Minnesota aren't great. Like, they're not going to keep a ton of clean sheets, but I don't think many teams in the MLS do, really. No. It's a very goal-heavy league, and unless you're like the Philadelphias, I mean, Andre Blake's injured right now, but that's another story. Unless you're the upper echelon of the MLS, you're not keeping consistent clean sheets, really. There's just goals in that league, and it's just the nature of the beast. And can you get good AA scores? Is kind of, can you not concede 3, and can you get a good AA score as a keeper? It's kind of my thinking behind this. And at £31 right now floor, I couldn't really say no. The rest of the keepers are like 40s, 50s, and there's my whole budget, right? So it wasn't possible for me to build this team unless I went for the cheaper goalkeeper, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, Dane St. Clair comes in there. The reason why I didn't do a handcuff, and for people who don't know what a handcuff is basically where you buy the 2nd or 3rd keeper of Minnesota just in case St. Clair gets injured. And you could do that. You could probably just get rid of one of my midfielders who are like, say, £3 and buy the 2nd or 3rd goalie. But I found it quite hard to figure out who the number 2 is actually at Minnesota. They've got like 3 number 2s, if that makes sense. You got like Fred Emmons. You had an older guy who was like 33. I can't remember his name. And then there was another guy. Yeah, Owen. I was just a bit like, I don't want to buy them all. I feel like that's just a waste. So I'm just gonna wait. I'm hopefully Dane doesn't get injured, of course. But weird things happen. Weird things happen in football, obviously, right? So it is a bit risky going in with one goalkeeper without the handcuff. But like I said, you can definitely sort of subtract a midfielder or a surplus defender and kind of bring one in if you need to. So that's the goalkeeper. in. Defender-wise, we've got a bit of a variety. I like going with stacks, but I didn't really find it sort of helpful to do so with Minnesota, to be honest. So I'm going with Robin Janssens of Orlando, and he comes in at £1.60. We're then going with a Tafari, Nkosi Tafari, who plays for FC Dallas. And I've been watching their games quite closely recently. I'm a Jesus Ferreira fanboy, and I get to watch a lot of these Dallas games. And he's really impressed me, to be fair. And I think he comes in at £2.30 roughly right now. And then we're going with a Daniel Lovitz of Nashville. And he comes in at £3.60, which was quite hefty, to be fair. Variety of players, right? You got Lovitz, who's more of a wing back, left back, whatever, can get assists. You know, his L15 is 53, so it's a lot higher than the other two. So, you know, it all depends on what you want to do matchup-wise for every given week. That's kind of the thinking behind this. I'm given a variety of choices, positions within the defence. You got Janssens and Tafari, centre halves. Lovitz is a wing back. Going to be a bit more variance in his score. He might hit a 90. He might just hit a 25. And that's just the nature of the beast. Or do you want to go with the more solid centre-back options and maybe go with a Janssens or Tafari if you think their matchup is good? For example, Orlando are away to Philly this weekend. You know, I'm not going to probably pick Janssens there, really, because I think Philly are probably going to score a couple goals, and that just ruins any clean sheet chance. And obviously, the -4s are just disastrous, right? Same for Tafari. He's away to LAFC. So they couldn't be harder games for those two guys, actually. Where, you know, Nashville are at home to Cincy. It makes sense to play an attacking wing back at home to Cincinnati. It's just kind of, and that's something you just got to learn over time as well as just matchups, right? That's another story. But that's kind of my sort of defender contingency. L15s are pretty low of Janssens and Tafari, but Tafari's L5 is 58, so he's had a really good start of the season. Obviously only played 3 or 4 games. I think £2.34 floor just seems a bit ludicrous. And then Janssens at £1.60. I think he had a bit of an injury towards the end of last season, but he seemed to have, you know, started the season pretty well. And at £1.60, I just don't think I could have left him there, Chris.
Yeah, no, I like what you've done. Obviously, looking at just the cap 240 does mean that you could do that, you know, where you've got a bit of depth for each position, and like you say, you could play the matchups. And that's one thing that, you know, with my strategy is you're going to be, this is your players.
Yeah.
And obviously you could slide players in and out from the two, but it's that gives you proper depth. And like you say, looking at those matchups, if you don't fancy it, you just switch it for one of the other players. So 100%. Definitely.
And the chances of having like 3 terrible matchups can happen, but the chances are it probably won't. So you've always got that one, like the jailbait one, and Lovitz would be this weekend, I guess. Okay, midfielders, like I said, we did have a bit of a overlap, and that is Artur from Houston Dynamo, and he comes in at, I think it's £2.70 roughly right now. Next to that is a Dax McCarty, who's 58p.
He is a hero of mine. I had him. He was one of the players that I had, and I had him in as my captain because he was Mr. Reliable. He got you 50 points every week, guaranteed.
100%. So he, you know, at 58p, I literally couldn't leave him there. And then sort of a Dax McCarty on steroids is your Michael Bradley.
Michael Bradley, yeah.
Who's of course Toronto's captain. Obviously, he's getting on a base. I think he's actually 36 right now, or maybe he's only 35. But regardless, he comes in at actually my most expensive midfielder, and he just gives that like ultra reliability in the sense like you know you're going to get like 55 out of him basically. Yeah. And that just depends on, you know, can you afford to have an L15 to 53 within those 5 players? If you can, then you need to take away from another position effectively. You know, you need a lower L15 somewhere else to help that out. And Artur could have been, you know, if I'm going with 2 midfielders, an L15, a 43 and a 53, it just makes sense. You know, I'm within budget quite comfortably. And yeah, like you said, Artur had a great start of the season, great L5. And obviously the L15 will catch up eventually if he carries on this sort of form. And then, Dax McCarty, he's just too cheap for me to not have him in there, basically. And like you said, Mr. Reliable, he's at the heart of that sort of Nashville team. You know, he's never really going to get too many decisives, if any. But you just never know. And, you could get lucky. And at 50p, I just couldn't leave him there.
Yeah. And do you know what? All you need for these cards for the threshold is to be hitting 50. And if he's coming in hitting you those 50 and he's cost you 58p, he's probably going to pay for himself with one threshold. Do you know what I mean? I love all three. I do. All three are like I said, Dax McCarthy was a long time hold of mine. And it wasn't last season, but the season before, he seemed to drop out at the end of the season. I was like, oh man, he's done. And then I sold mine and I was gutted when I sold it. And then when I seen he's been back in and again, I was like, I was very tempted to buy his rare, but yeah, he's I love all three of those picks.
Yeah, like that's the thing. The thing that doesn't annoy me about this gallery build, but in terms of like, if you're a beginner, are you really going to know who Michael? That's the issue, isn't it? That is the big sort of issue here. Is do you know who Dax McCarthy is? No, if you've not played Sorare. Are you going to know who Michael Bradley is? Maybe, because he's played in Europe and whatever. But it's tough, isn't it? That's kind of the stumbling block, I think, for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and the other thing just to look at with those two in particular is their age.
Yeah,
people get really hung up on the age, I never have, because I don't look at these as long-term commitments. I'm picking these players up, and I'll probably sell them long before they're thinking they're being retired. So when you are looking at these players, guys, sometimes you do need to step back from the age and not let that bother you, because you're not marrying them. I said that in a podcast recently. It's like you're not married to this card. You can let it go whenever you want. It's not a DiCaprio situation where you have to have under 25s only.
Or a Harry trade situation.
Well, here we go. Yeah, it's just one of these things. You can literally, if you're just trying to hit that threshold, picking up a card for 58p where you could win the £4 back on a weekly basis, it's a no-brainer.
Oh, 100%. The way, yeah. Again, it just comes down to perspective, doesn't it? Like, it's rich for me to say, I am an under 23 predominant gallery, right? But that's just where I find my most enjoyment. But that's not to say that I'm never against picking up a Michael. Like I bought a Michael Bradley actually 2 or 3 weeks ago, sold him on or whatever. Like you said, you're not married to these cards. You can come in and out of them where needs be, and that's kind of what it is. It's not like these guys are going to stay in your gallery forever, and that's just the end of it. You can, there's fluidity in it. Hopefully
100%
is the thinking, right? Okay, forwards. I've only got 2, and they are Kiri Shelton of Sporting Kansas City, and I think he comes in at about £3.50. And then my second pick is a bit of a punt, because he hasn't really got himself back into the side yet, and that's CJ Sapong, of Nashville FC. So he comes in at £1. Again, couldn't really leave him there. Okay, so the thinking behind this is, Shelton is going to be my bread and butter. Like, he is going to start probably every week until somehow CJ Sapong gets back into the Nashville side. I think the start of last season, him and Mukhtar were just ridiculous. Like, they were just on fire. And I think he had a bit of an injury and whatever, and he looks like he's fallen out of the starting 11 for now. He's been coming off the bench, as you can tell by his L5. He's getting substitute appearances, and it's just one of them ones where, like, he's just going to be there just in case anything happens to Shelton, and hopefully at that point Sapong is sort of more reliable and into the side. Shelton, he's not a number 9. I actually watched the Dallas Kansas City game on the weekend and played off the right. He's athletic. He makes things happen. Like, he's not going to set the world alight, if I'm being honest. But L15 or 36, it just, for now anyway, that's just going to give me a lot of sort of breathing room where, I can play my Michael Bradley, I can play my Lovett, and I can play, whoever else really. I can basically play at anyone here. If I'm gonna stick Shelton in as my forward, I have the luxury of sort of going with whoever I kind of want in that sense, depending on matchups and stuff. And it's not the most exciting sort of 9 plays in the world, but like I said, it all comes down to what is the purpose of this team, and the purpose is, for me, is can I hit the threshold? It's just as simple as that. I don't think this team is ever going to win Cap 240, and that's just being completely honest. It's not. It really isn't. But can it win? Say there's 30 games left. There's a little bit more. Let's say 30 games left. Does this win threshold half the time? I don't know, but I'd like to think it does, if we're being honest. If all my players are fit and I have the choice of everyone or whatever, I'd be confident in saying I could hit it at least 1 in 3, hopefully. This is no financial advice. I have no clue how this is going to get on and how these players are going to get on in these next 30 games. But that's just kind of my, that's just my opinion, simple as. And that just kind of leaves me with, that doesn't really leave me with any breathing room in terms of, valuations. I think this comes in at just under £50, depending on, I'm going off floor price right now. And you don't have to play floor price. You can obviously, set offers and whatever, and you can get this team cheaper. But if you wanted to just buy this team right now, it would cost you basically 50 quid. And I was just thinking, actually, when you mentioned your cap 240, I could technically put the leftovers into a cap 240, really, couldn't I?
Yeah, you could just I like to do that anyway. I do that with my rares, because you never know what could happen. You just don't know what could happen. So yeah, having that opportunity to do that, common goalkeeper, and boom, there you go. You've got an extra team sitting in there. So yeah, I like it. And like you say, the lower last 15 on a forward doesn't fuss me that much, because I know that one decisive is 60 points. Yeah. And that 60 points could be all the difference of pushing you even towards the cards in some of those. So yeah, no, I like it. I like to say, obviously mine has been more kind of short term, looking to build the ETH from the thresholds to try and get that. And obviously you're looking at long term, and it's two completely different ways to look at the exact same thing. And I like to see the different perspectives on that.
Yeah, no, I think it'll make. Yeah, I'm kind of, now you've said that, you're hyping me up a little bit. I'm hoping the people at home can maybe relate a little bit. But no, I do really like your build. Just trying to think back, 2 years ago when I started, if I had that information and just a bit of guidance, in terms of, those competitions weren't there then, and blah blah blah, right? Yeah. But they are there now, and if you are new, these are the type of sort of options that are out there for you at this sort of price range. You're not going to be buying Haalands and stuff, unfortunately. That's just not how this game works. It's just, It is what it is, right? You play within your means, and you play with what you can afford to lose in that sense. And you're not going out to lose, of course, but, it's just kind of one of those things is, what can you afford to play with, right? And where's your, your risk tolerance at the end of the day?
Yeah, totally agree. And only play with what you're comfortable with. Because at the end of the day, obviously, once we've bought these cards, it's not like we'll play them once and that's them done. You own these cards, so you can sell them. Obviously, if they come into a rich vein forum, brilliant, you could sell them. If they're struggling, you're maybe going to make a bit of a loss on them. So from that perspective, yeah, you need to be comfortable with what you put in. And don't look at it as a money pit. Obviously, we are trying to play for the thresholds, and obviously that over time will mount up. And if it covers the cost of your team, brilliant, and if you could withdraw that and play for free on the house money, sounds good. It's the long-term way to look at the game.
100%. I'm just thinking to my gallery here, okay, 50 quid spent, there is a chance that Dax McCarthy might retire at the end of the season. That just might happen, right? He's at that age. Michael Bradley the same. You never know. These players seem to be immortal, but they're not. There is a lot, there is sort of a sell-by date on football players at the end of the day, and it all comes at different ages for different players, right? But ultimately, like you said, you're hoping that the X amount of thresholds that this team has won can offset those things, but offsetting 50p shouldn't be too hard. Offsetting £3.50, that can happen in one game week. If this weekend now this team goes out, I'm actually really interested to see. I'm gonna try and build after this video, see what 5 I would go with, and see if they do hit the threshold. And you've literally won back your Dax McCarthy and your Michael Bradley, even if they do retire at the end of the season, in literally one game week.
Yeah, 100%. That's the way you've got to look at it. It's and also, if you are worried in 6 months' time before the end of the season that he's going to retire, then you could sell them at that point. Sell them over the summer when and then you can maybe look to go back into the European leagues. I can guarantee if I bought all 10 of these cards that I put into mine, I probably wouldn't have all 10 of them in 4 weeks' time. I would be rotating. It's just what I do. My gallery, you could look at my gallery Sorare in the budget. You'll see my longest hold, I think, is about 3 months.
Wow.
And most of the cards are turned over within about a week or so. It's just how I play the game. I just like to trade in and out players, make the profits, and keep building that way. So yeah, it's a fun way to look at the game, and I just like the fact that now you can actually join. And there's we've both covered at least 2 competitions, possibly 3, for 50 quid. When I started, I put 300 quid in, and I picked an absolute dud MLF team. I think I had 3 DNPs, 1 substitute, and 1 starter. That was it. And it was an absolute shambles. And the starter was my common goalkeeper. So it was a shambles. And I had to regroup and decide what I was going to do. So, but now that there's so many more leagues you can choose from, you can pick your own league, basically, for whoever you support or wherever country you're from, most of the leagues are there now. So it just gives a huge option for doing this kind of thing. And I think I know there's a lot of doom and gloom, but I think there's also a lot of opportunity.
There really is. There really is. That just brought me back then, like when you mentioned like starting. Well, when you did start and like the choices that were available to you for the given prices, and I'm just thinking back, like it was so hard to like get a decent team back when I started in Jan 21. In terms of like, I bought a few good players when I first started off the auction, just not luck, but I kind of knew players from Football Index, like your Lorenzo Pellegrini's. Like I just kind of knew players, right, which helped. But like even just still, like I couldn't get a goalkeeper. Getting a goalkeeper at the time, obviously, like just for people who were watching this, there was no limited when I joined, right? So it was just rares as the lowest scarcity. And I think I had Jesse Moulin in goals, who was at St. Etienne. I think he was about 55 at the time. Just like I had Lorenzo Pellegrini playing with like Jesse Moulin. It was just so hard to get in terms of like, one, people weren't selling cards, and two, if they were just extortionate, right? So like, there was no sort of but scarcity below to get in on starting. And like I'm talking about buying nine players with 50 quid, and they're all playing games. Like I don't know. For me, I think I don't realize how much of a luxury that is, because I don't need to worry about it because I started 2 years ago. Do you get what I'm saying?
100%, I get what you're saying. I mean, do you know what? I'm a bus driver for a living, so when I speak to guys from my work and say that, because at one point I had a gallery that was sitting about 4, 5, 6 grand, and I'd only started with £300. Wow. But when you're trying to explain that to people, and then I start to think about it, wait a minute, like how much money have I got in here now? And it's a lot to try and say to somebody, and then obviously we went through that massive boom, and before the limiteds came in, and an average midfielder, not even a good one, just an average midfielder was costing you 3 figures.
Easy.
And to take that one average midfielder, split it amongst, you could buy our 2 galleries for that one average midfielder from back then. It's just insane. And I know there's, as I said, there has been a lot of doom and gloom. I really think there's a lot of opportunity just now. If somebody is new coming into this platform with their eyes open, not expecting, to win the world and get Haaland and Mbappe's and everything, but to be realistic, to come in, buy these kind of teams, you're going to have a lot of football to follow over the course of a weekend. Mm-hmm. It's not just sitting there watching your coupon get burst in 1 minute of football because the team you've put to be, keep a clean sheet is 1 down after a minute. You've actually got a full weekend of football, Friday night right the way through to Monday night in some instances. So I just think it opens up so many avenues. It makes football fun again. I've got my Dundee top on here. I don't have a lot to shout about when it comes football wise. So we did last night, but it's great to just have a lot of football to follow over the weekend, and it's you're not traipsing the depths of the J League or the K League to find players. You can now find, like we said, Tyrone Mings. You can find players from leagues that and go with what you know. So I like what we've done today. I think it's quite educational, and just to see 50 quid and what it actually gets you is quite a lot. And just as an aside, if you did want to pick up one of the cheap midfielders on a rare form, you could even go into rare kickoff with some of these teams now. So there's the avenue to progress is there for everyone, and it's a great opportunity at this moment in time, I think. So it has been good to see it from different perspective.
Yeah, no, it's been really interesting, and just thank you for coming on for sure.
No, thank you.
Yeah, people at home, if you are at home, you might be out, whatever you're doing, leave a comment whose gallery you think is better and why. Also, leave your gallery name, and I mean your Sorare gallery name, and then we'll count up the votes. If Chris has more votes than me, then I'm giving a card away. If I get more votes than Chris, then Chris gives the card away. Be a little limited, just send straight into somebody's Sorare gallery. Make sure you leave your Sorare gallery name in the comments, otherwise it just becomes tough to contact you. But Chris, thank you for joining me. And lads at home, leave a like on the video if you did enjoy. Please go check out Chris's Twitter, YouTube. Is that kind of the main two?
Yeah, it's just to Sorare on the budget on both. So I'm easy to find, and the DMs are always open. So
and I think Chris is sort of niche in that sense, and obviously what he's called it in terms of Sorare on the budget, right? It kind of hits the nail on the head for a lot of beginners, and I think that's a credit to you in terms of like it's just a very clever way of doing things. Like a lot of people are going to gravitate towards that because it's just very relatable, and I think you're going to be, you are like very helpful for beginners in that sense.
I appreciate that.
So I see a lot of value in your avenue of playing the game, 1,000,000%. and I think there's a lot of success to be had in there as well. So no, credit to you for that. And
awesome, thank you very much for that.
No, of course. And thank you for watching, lads. That's episode 4 of the Sorare Gallery Builder, and we'll see you back for episode 5.